It's Big 3 day today, which means that we're going to be going through a top-down view of Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, the top three cryptocurrencies by market cap. Of course, there is Tether in there as well, but we're not going to be looking at Tether because, well, why? Anyways, maybe we'll look at Tether dominance at the end of this one. Anyways, I do want to state before we get into this that this is just more or less a higher-term time frame view, specifically with this weekly closure, which happens later tonight, and then obviously next week, which is the monthly closure. So all of this is just relevant to the higher-term time frame. So without further ado, we can just jump right into it, starting off with Solana as the first one. And Solana, very similar to Bitcoin, is seemingly putting in that weekly higher low based upon that dump that we did see from August, early August this is, which got no continuation, which got no continuation basically. I mean, there's not really much to add on to that sentence, and seemingly putting in a higher low right here. On top of that, with the weekly closure coming in just a little bit later tonight in 16 hours, 8 minutes, and 47 seconds and counting, we can see that Solana is going to have a chance to actually close back above all major moving averages. The red 5 exponential moving average is currently at 151.06, so if Solana can just maintain above there, about $4.5 above where it currently is right now, it will satisfy that condition, and that's just going to be another sort of brick in this building that is seemingly creating the next higher low. On top of that, when we go down to the 5-day time frame, we can see that there is some hidden bullish divergence, a phantom drive I should say, formulating right here. Also a nice bounce around the neutral zone for the 5-day RSI, and if that does get confirmed, which will not be happening tonight, but it will be happening potentially as soon as this would be Tuesday night on closure, that would be the next sort of major indication, I suspect, from an actual indicator that I would be looking for this thing to likely trade back up towards your highs from late July, somewhere around 170 to maybe even as much as 185. Of course, that does set it up for a bit of a run a little bit later. Of course, as well, that is likely just going to be based upon the general market movements. I think Bitcoin is just the easier one to look at in these instances, but here's the thing. I do want to go down to a daily time frame now, and a bit of a sombering fact is that despite this last move to the upside that did begin this past week on around Wednesday/Thursday, Solana, contrary to Bitcoin, has not traded above the Thursday, the 8th of August high, which was a key ingredient for us on Bitcoin to look at the next sort of major higher low being confirmed. Solana has not done that just yet. Doesn't mean that it's not going to do it, but it is a sign that it is relatively weak compared to Bitcoin. Not saying that it's weak overall. It's much stronger than most everything else in this market, to be honest with you. But compared to Bitcoin, it is not above that same sort of level, which is an indication of relative weakness, meaning that Bitcoin is still likely the main driver of this market as we go onwards and forwards. On top of that, the monthly time frame, again, not closing today, but closing in just a little under a week from now, is going to have a chance to, assuming that things remain basically here or higher, close above that red moving average, which is the 5 exponential moving average. And again, the reason why we're interested in that is because, generally when things are closing monthlies above, you should look at that as like trend in motion, and generally, going to be, in this case, positioned towards the upside. And when, things start to close below, that is generally the end of your trending monthly move, which typically marks, the end of, or the end of market cycles in cryptocurrencies. And well, as of right now, that number is at 153.37. So again, about $3 buffer right there with 6.5 days left to go. So of course, many things can happen within about 6.5 days, but just keep that number in mind. As long as Solana is above, that does keep open these sort of these sort of bullish hopium that things in this market are just generally going to push higher into the end of the year. So I suspect that still September will be somewhat slower, but all of this is really a setup for the last quarter of this year. Anyways, yes, a couple more things for Solana here, actually. Let's go over to our 5-day time frame. We identified a stochastic momentum trend line here in last week or the week prior to that video. This one's still likely to get tested before we do see any sort of like real momentous move to the upside. Current positioning of this is at actually 160 is the current momentum pivot. So this next 5-day period probably does still continue on to the downside. You can imagine that there's still about maybe 2 or 3 more closures before this trend line is actually met, or somewhere around there is met. So that naturally will just imply that, still looking at early-ish to mid-September before we get any sort of like real move, I suspect. But, I'd be looking for something like this. If you see it start to turn around, around that time when it's somewhat closer to there, that would be the next sort of big signal that, hey, this thing is going to actually pull through to the upside. Again, you're likely going to see the same thing on Bitcoin as well, if that's going to be happening, because Bitcoin does seem to be still driving this market. Anyways, I think we've gotten everything here for Solana. Let's look at Solana versus Bitcoin. Solana versus Bitcoin, holding up still pretty damn high as far as most things are considered, especially when it comes to comparing altcoins versus Bitcoin, as we'll look at Ethereum a little bit later. Not in the same sort of posturing here, but it's still an overall trading range, still an overall just consolidation between about the highs at about 30,000 satoshis to the upside versus the lows at about 20,000 satoshis to the downside. As long as things are also in between there, we don't really have anything to be looking at in terms of like an actual trend and breakout or breakdown. This could just as easily be reaccumulation as it could be distribution. And in these cases, in my experience, the best thing to be doing is to be doing the most boring thing, which is wait for an actual break above or below this region here, because that is typically what confirms these sort of things. Of course, you do have trend on your side if you do want to be bullish for this. And again, relatively speaking, this one is showing strength compared to most other altcoins, especially versus their Bitcoin pairing. But still, this thing, until it's literally right in the middle of the range. Like until we see a break above about 30,000 or a break below about 20,000, I would not be front running anything right here, because there's just not like the obvious trade. Of course, it does break below 20,000 satoshis. Like you're probably looking much further to the downside, probably closer to like 12-ish thousand satoshis after maybe a bounce tipped at 15. And of course the upside, if it does break above about 30,000 satoshis, I mean, this thing's going to retest prior all-time highs and probably make new all-time highs from there. So it's a big move and likely still baking here. So moving on from there, let's get into Ethereum. Look at Ethereum versus the dollar first. And let me just make sure that I have my notes all properly situated here. Yeah. So first things first that I want to identify on Ethereum, the monthly look in comparison to Solana and also Bitcoin by that measurement is still well below the red 5 exponential moving average. So I would still be looking at Ethereum as relatively weak compared to both Solana and Bitcoin, and just not in the position of power that both of those are seemingly in right now. Of course, it's a long week left to go. A lot can happen in about 6.5 days, but the red 5 for reference here is actually above 3,000. It's 3,090 or so. So it does make it a little bit more difficult to be looking at Ethereum as like one of the major drivers in this market. I'm not saying that it can't go to the upside, especially if Bitcoin goes to the upside, Ethereum will follow. Just probably not as strong, looking at it right here. Now, I do want to outline that today, for the weekly closure, there is potential for some hidden bullish divergence, which would probably be the next sort of biggest signal that I'd be looking for in Ethereum. It is in there as of right now, but it is not confirmed. Realistically, with Ethereum still operating below all major moving averages on the weekly, even if it does confirm on this indicator, I'd be kind of skeptical of it. I want to see it at least get above the green 55 or especially the red 5 right here. If one of those two things happens, especially if both of those two things happen, that would be a really good indication that, this one actually will run up towards or past 3,000, probably before end of month if that does happen. But, we got 16 hours, 1 minute and 7 seconds left to go for this weekly closure. So, time is ticking here. Of course, just because it doesn't happen this week doesn't mean that it can't happen next week. But, I'd say that's just unconfirmed as of right now. Technical target for that actually would be just somewhere around that yellow 21 exponential moving average, which is basically the same as your red 5 on the monthly, about 3,090 or so. So do keep that in mind, because those things likely do go hand in hand. And of course, if Bitcoin and Solana go to the upside here, you're probably going to see Ethereum do the same shit as well, right? Anyways, yes, okay, so we got that. I do want to outline this as well. Ethereum on the 5-day time frame has that same stochastic momentum trend line regression that we saw on Solana as well. This one very likely to turn up on the next period, which again is closing in about 2.5 days, assuming that Ethereum is above 2,400. And we would essentially look at this as another trend line regression test. In fact, probably getting a little bit stronger here because it would be front running that regression, which is a sign of momentum increasing over time. So that would be these these sort of things, the weekly and the 5-day, you'd be looking for if Ethereum is going to pull through here. On top of that, I do want to, or do I want to get into that? Yeah, I do want to outline this as well. So Ethereum, contra to Bitcoin and Solana, well, it actually has traded above its August the 8th high here. But what is a little bit more concerning is that the daily RSI does have potential on this move to create hidden bearish divergence, actually, between the highs that were put in on the 29th of July right here and the highs that we potentially are seeing as of right now. Last week or the week prior to that, I was kind of suggesting that this one likely comes down a little bit first before anything else. Looks like I'm probably going to be wrong in that, but if it is going to happen, it probably does happen from this high here. The problem is that if you confirm a local top, which will be confirmed with any sort of a daily closure below about 2,700 especially, you will have a natural divergence between a high that was put in above 3,300 and this high right here. And that actually very likely would get price action back down to about 2,400. So I'd be a little more cognizant to see if that does get confirmed in the coming day or two. Again, closure below 2,700 would do it. As it is right now, the daily jewel is actually still suggesting upside. So that is probably going to supersede that potential signal because, like I said, the hidden bearish divergence signal right here, it is not confirmed. Need to see below 2,700 minimum on a daily closing basis, and then yeah, that would play out. But it's just a potential for right now, and you can see where things would likely go if that were to happen. Anyways, moving on to Ethereum and Bitcoin pair. Again, it's clearly relatively weak compared to the one that we just looked at with Solana. I still would like to wait for the monthly closure before calling this one like a real breakdown. But look, if the monthly closes below your May lows, which right now it's below by a decent amount, I don't think that there's any more hopium to really be promoting for something like Ethereum here versus its Bitcoin parent. Again, Ethereum versus Bitcoin can go down while Ethereum versus the dollar goes up. It's just, again, about relative strength. So, a lot can happen in 6.5 days, as we always say. But if you see it below the May lows, it's better to be betting on downside continuation here, especially with the 21 and 55 exponential moving averages getting ready for a cross after a nice consolidation here. I mean, this is typically a very powerful signal. I don't know how well this will work on a monthly with somewhat limited history, but in general, when you see something like this, a consolidation around major moving averages switching into a certain posture, in this case the downside, I mean, that is usually a very strong trending signal, and this is a monthly time frame, so it would be theoretically even more strong. But yeah, 6.5 days. We'll see where it is at the end of this next week's and / month. Moving on from there, we can get into Bitcoin. Just really quick here on Bitcoin. We pointed this one out early this week where the signal was confirmed, I believe, on Monday, and it was a look at the weekly jewel. We haven't actually spoken about this too much in recent times, but this one, a very, very powerful signal here. All I've done is just marked off the 50 read, the neutral zone, and just measured any time that the jewel has, one, come down below there, and then two, popped back above there on a weekly closing basis with that upside curvature as represented by that light blue cyan color. Now, this has happened about 11 times in Bitcoin's full history, actually. And of those 11 times, 9 of them have basically just preceded major, massive runs. 2 of them have been tremendous failures. One of those failures was coming off the back of, the Rona dump over here. It actually did get a little bit of continuation to the upside first before failing. And then the time before that, and the only other time before that, was the bull trap of 2014 right here. And this one, it did not go higher. So this was a complete failure right here. So, good stats, but not perfect, as things typically are. What I've also done is I've marked off all of these signals that have come somewhat soon after the halvings for Bitcoin in its past. And these are represented by the red vertical bars. And I'll just show you the results, and you can draw whatever conclusions you want from this. The last one was here, 2020. Again, Bitcoin basically traded sideways for a few months, but these were all higher lows, and this was all continuation. You also notice price basically remained above that red 5 exponential the whole fucking time that it was trending, as things typically do. The time before that was actually very, very similar to what we have seen thus far, where Bitcoin has the halving over here, big dump, this one about a 40% move on a wick by wick basis, gets the signal over here, sideways and up the whole way through after, this this was generally boring price action, but it was just straight sideways and up. I do think that's kind of what Bitcoin's doing as of right now. And then the time before that, also somewhat reminiscent of that past iteration and also the current iteration. Bitcoin playing out about a 30+% drawdown from close to close. Again, gets a signal right here. Boom, sideways and up the whole way through. Looks amazing, when you have the whole chart in view. But when you're looking at it, just from here, it would have been a big question mark, right? So what I would say is that still we're probably in for some boring sideways, but boring sideways is going to favor the boo laws here, especially as Bitcoin does reclaim all major moving averages with 15 hours and 54 minutes left to go. So in this case, again, a lot of similarities here from a high to low measurement, about a 33.33% retracement, very comparable again to two of these that we've seen. This one right here, on a wick basis, like what about like 30, 37, 38%. And then obviously we just looked at this one, or did we look at this one over here? It was a 37% move to the downside on a wick by wick basis. So, looking at this one, it's very much within the context of those past signals in both a timing and percentage wise base. So I'd be looking at that as a generally positive signal for Bitcoin, especially as long as it's above all these major moving averages. It's just, it can take some time. It can take a lot of time here still. The next big key again for me is just Bitcoin closing above basically $62,000, let's call it, for tonight's weekly closure. I suppose we could look very quickly at Tether dominance. I'm just curious where things are at right now. I didn't actually plan for this. Looks like my LARP lines are playing out there somewhat. Does seem to be a local high to me, probably some hidden bearish divergence. Indeed it does. So yeah, next move likely does bring this down, and Tether dominance coming down typically is good for the crypto boo laws. Monthly, however, monthly is it looks pretty fucking bullish to me. So we'll see. We'll see how nasty this rejection is by the end of the month. If this closes below, let's call it like 5 and 10%, I'd be calling that a rejection with continuation to the downside. But until then, the weekly probably does come down here a little bit, but the monthly does have me concerned, I suppose, if that's anything to be going off of. Anyways, I'll end the video right there. I got a lot of feedback yesterday on my on my end of video message. Some people loved it, some people did not like it. It's all good, man. But what I figured today is that because some people were very triggered, very triggered, that was a clip that showed some of the blue team in perhaps a less than great light. Today we're going to show the other side. So we'll do it right here. And here you go from our local crackhead lady with high self-esteem.
To any person, school, government, company, or anyone for that matter who thinks you should be less white, let me be the first white person to say, fuck you.
Whoa, holy shit. I bet when you first saw her, hold on, let's just get her back on the board here. I bet when you first saw her, you weren't expecting her to be on, well, I'm guessing she's on the other team. I'm just guessing here. Anyways, it's like if someone says, if someone chants USA, it's like they're definitely on the right. If someone says we need more gender affirming care for migrants, they're probably on the left, Just making an assumption here. Could be wrong though. Who knows? Anyways, we'll end things on that note before I piss off any more people. This video's been long enough already. As always, wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.